if you talk, they'll hear you. We're going live in 7 seconds. But since I spotlight myself, they can only see me, but they can hear you if you talk. All right, so we're live on Facebook. I'm just going to share this over here because that's what we do. 1 second, share and share now. And one more. Okay, one more sharing to do. Oh, someone else is trying to get in. Okay, we let them into Zoom. And one more sharing I have to do over here. I will have to apologize just first of all, today we're not going to have any of the text on the screen. JLI makes the text for just 1 second. JLI makes the text. Okay, shared. All right, great. JLI makes the text, and for some reason their website, I don't know if it's hacked or whatnot, but it's not showing. Okay, I hope I'm showing on Facebook because I don't see myself. 1 second. Let me make sure I'm looking good. Okay, there. All right, looking good. As always. Okay, so as I was saying, JLI was having some issues with the website, so we're not going to have any of the text on the screen. I have mentioned before that you can get the textbook on Amazon. The textbook for these 5 classes that we've been learning can now be had on Amazon. However, you will need a special direct link. So if you want that, you can put it in the comments or put it in the message or put a message on Zoom. I'm going to blow the shofar because first of all, it's a month of El. We blow the shofar every day. But also, if we're talking about the redemption, what heralds the redemption more than the shofar? As we know, the call of the shofar is what brings the redemption. So it's really a great beginning to where we're going to talk about Elijah again. And Elijah is the one who calls the redemption forth. So let me blow the shofar quickly over here. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming once again to another class on Days Are Coming. This is all about the Messiah, the Mashiach, and the actual specific part of Mashiach that we're discussing over here is about the coming of the Mashiach. So we can have a discussion what happens once Mashiach comes, but so far a lot of it has been about how Mashiach comes. So in the first class, we discussed how there's different ways that Mashiach can come. There can be a gradual, natural approach, or there can be a quick, meritorious approach. In the second class, we spoke about the idea of Gog and Magog, this war that's supposed to happen before the Mashiach comes. In the third class, which we actually gave many, many weeks ago, we spoke about Elijah. And the topics we spoke about Elijah back then was really about how Elijah, more about his history before we get to the Mashiach, you know, who he was as a prophet, and discussing the connection between the old Elijah who was thousands of years ago, and Elijah that's going to herald the redemption. What's the connection between him and heralding the redemption? We touched upon also back then how Elijah has to come. Does he have to come before the redemption or after? But we're going to touch today more about Elijah as he's connected to the actual redemption. Because there's a lot more detail that goes into Elijah and how he's connected to the actual redemption. There's a lot more things that he does. So more specifically, today we're going to discuss, in addition to Elijah's role as the one who announces the coming of the Mashiach, we're also going to discuss his other roles. So in other words, Elijah's role in the coming of Mashiach is not just that he's, so to speak, the trumpeter, the announcer, but it's much more than that, is that he actually has a lot of other roles. He has a lot of interesting jobs and things that he does. The second thing we're going to discuss is, considering he has all these jobs of the coming of Mashiach, why are all of these jobs necessary? What's the point in it if we have Mashiach? Why can't Mashiach do it all? Why do we need Elijah to do any of this? So for all of that, that is why we are here. Hi, Couture, nice to see you on Facebook. Okay, so without further ado, let's get going here. Let me just open up this over here so I can see people's. Okay, all right. So the first text that we have for today, which again, I'm not going to have on the screen because for whatever reason, it wasn't working. Oh, well, it might work. All right, maybe in the middle, I think towards the middle, I will have it for you. So the first text we have today is from the Mishnah. Now, just to give a little history on the Mishnah, for those who don't know what the Mishnah is, the Mishnah is the first text of oral tradition. So the oral tradition for many, many years was not allowed to be written. The first text of the oral tradition is called the Mishnah. So very, very authoritative text, of course, goes back to the 2nd century. The end of the 2nd century is when it was printed. And in this text, it discusses not only Elijah as he's connected to as the one who brings the redemption, but more importantly, his other jobs. So here I'm going to read it to you. And it says like this. Rabbi Joshua said, I have received a tradition from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who heard it from his teacher, and his teacher heard it from his teacher, as a law given to Moses from Sinai, that Elijah will not come to pronounce unclean or pronounce clean. In other words, he's not going to say, this is kosher, this is not kosher. To put away or to bring near. In other words, he's not, what that means is that we all know, I'm sure you've heard of this, let's say there are a lot of people who are Jewish today who probably don't know it, okay? There are probably also a lot of people who think they're Jewish, who possibly may not actually be Jewish. It's possible that the tradition that was passed on from family to family got broken along the way. Someone made a mistake. You know, it can happen. Or let's say, you know, during wars, you know, we're not. We've been through a lot. You know, as 1 second, I actually found over here the slide. You know, as Jews, we've been through a lot of different wars, and so it's very, very possible that someone thinks they're Jewish, but they may not actually be Jewish because maybe in a war they got adopted. You know, different things happened, and so there's some opinions say, well, Elijah's going to come and he's going to find all those who are really Jewish and all those who are not really Jewish, and so to speak, you might be in for a terrible surprise when Mashiach comes. He might come and tell you, oh, you thought you were always Jewish, you're not Jewish. Or he might come to other people and say, you thought you weren't Jewish, you are Jewish. So some people say that. Others say, 1 second. Okay, now I'm sharing the text over here. Let me also see the participants. Okay, all right. All right, so here you see the text. All right, so some people say that's what Mashiach is going to come and do. He's going to come and say who is really Jewish, who's not really Jewish. All right, what's kosher, what's not? And he says no. Elijah's not going to do that. He's not going to tell someone who thinks they're Jewish that they're not Jewish. And actually, this is a law in Jewish law. It says that if someone, it's called, once someone, so to speak, grows up in Jewish circles, you know, for a couple generations, and they believe themselves to be Jewish, they actually are Jewish. It's an interesting Jewish law. But anyways, I don't want to get too far deep into that. But anyways, the point of the matter here is that if someone has a mistaken identity, believing they're Jewish, and it goes on for generations, at some point they become Jewish. Okay, next thing. Rather, he says, so what is Elijah coming to do? But to put away those brought near by force, and to bring those put away by force near. So what does he mean? He means if someone was forcibly removed from being Jewish, okay? Or conversely, someone was forcibly forced to be a Jew, and they didn't want to be Jewish. Elijah is going to clarify that, and he gives an example. Apparently, we don't know of this family, but apparently the family of Beit Zipporah, they were apparently a very strong family, was on the other side of the Jordan. Sorry, so Beit Zipporah was a family, and Ben Sion is a very strong family. He put it away by force. So he took this whole Jewish family, and so to speak, took them away from Jewish circles and made them forget that they were Jewish. And Ben Zion brought it, and yet another family was there, and Ben Zion brought it near by force. So he took one family who was Jewish and put them amongst Gentiles to make them forget. He took another family who wasn't Jewish and brought them amongst the Jews to make them realize that they're Jewish. And in these cases such as these, Elijah will come to pronounce unclean or to pronounce clean, to put away, to bring near. So he's saying if something happened by force, then Elijah is going to get involved. Rabbi Judah says, so for example, let's say children in the Holocaust who were put into monasteries, and the people around the monastery did not want to tell them that they're Jewish. Seemingly from here, when Mashiach will come, Elijah will come and tell them, actually, you're Jewish. It's no fault of yours that you got lost to the Jewish people. Rabbi Judah says to bring near, but not to put away. In other words, he says Elijah will only, so to speak, add. He'll only bring in people who were lost, but he won't push away those who believe themselves to be Jewish. Rabbi Shimon says to conciliate disputes. So in other words, Elijah's other job is to take care of disputes. People argue, he will have the answers. And the sages say neither to put away nor to bring near, but to make peace in the world. For it is said, behold, I send you Elijah the prophet, and he shall turn the hearts of the father to the children, the hearts of the children to the father. So it sounds like he's making a peace in the family, which is, of course, we all know the best, not the best fights, but the worst fights are family fights. So what he's saying here, he's going to make peace even amongst the families. So from what we read here, we can understand that sorry. Okay, I had one more text to read here. The sages say there are no injustices with regarding to lineage. Rather, everyone's assumed lineage will ultimately be traced to the truth, for the Torah is the parent of all truth. Rather than justice, Elijah will indeed arbitrate. Will be wrongdoings between one person and another, for they are petty, causing one to destroy another with hatred. Elijah will come to remove this hatred and restore peace. So what he is trying to say is that Elijah's job is only to help with injustice and arbitrate. Regardless of which opinion we go with, what we see from here is Elijah possibly has many, many other jobs. Again, I don't want to get too detailed in all these different jobs. It's a lot. But what we see from here is Elijah's other jobs can be much more than just being the herald, the one who heralds and announces the redemption. Rather, he can get involved in areas of lineage. He can get involved in fights. He can get involved in pedigree. And so Elijah has a lot more jobs. That's what we're seeing. We're expanding our understanding of Elijah. Until now, we understood Elijah just as the person who tells us the Mashiach is coming. But from the texts that we have read, we see he may have a larger role. And now we're going to see that he may even have an even bigger role. Let's see here, Maimonides. It says, resurrection of the dead brings us to Elijah, or I think means is done through Elijah, as it is stated, lo and behold, lo, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great, awesome day of God, that he may turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, the hearts of the children back to their fathers. So we see here, once again, that Elijah's job is expanded. So not only is he the one who heralds the redemption, not only is the one who makes peace, not only is he possibly the one who traces back lineage, but he is one that will bring about the resurrection of the dead. Now, the topic of the resurrection of the dead and how that works with the coming of the Mashiach, that will be something we will discuss at length when we get later on, when we discuss the next section of the course, the actual coming Mashiach, what exactly the resurrection of the dead looks like. But what's important for us over here is to say that Elijah is the one that will herald the Elijah is the one that will herald the redemption, that will bring about the resurrection of the dead. Now, just an interesting point. The Zohar says, why is he the one in charge of the resurrection of the dead? So the Zohar says that that the keys of resurrection were given in Elijah's hand. Now, if you look in the book of the prophets, what's interesting is that the first case that we have of resurrection of the dead, I believe, is through Elijah. So let me just show you over here in the prophets in the book of Kings, chapter 17. There's a famous story that over here. Let's skip down here. All right, so after Elijah, we spoke a little bit about Elijah's story. Now he was hiding for a long time. And anyways, he finally arose and he went to Zarephath, and he met a widow there, and he called her and said, please take me a little water in a vessel and I shall drink. She went to take, and he called her son, said, take me a morsel of bread in your hand. And she basically said, I have cake. If I have cake, nothing but a handful of flour and a little oil flask. So basically she answered him, she said, I can't give you anything because all I have is a little bit of oil and a little bit of flour. So Elijah said, don't fear. He said, first make for me a small cake and bring it out to me. For you and your son make last. So basically what he's saying is I'll make sure that you'll have enough. So he blessed them that the flour and the oil would never finish. That was the blessing that Elijah gave them. And then later on in the story, as it says in chapter 17, it was after these happenings that the son of the woman, the mistress of this house, became ill, and his illness was very serious until no soul was left within him. She said to Elijah, what is there between me and you, man of God, that you have come to cause my sins to be remembered and kill my son? It's an interesting thing she's saying. What she's saying is basically when the prophet shows up, suddenly her merits look like less. In other words, we can, for example, I look very religious here in Palm Harbor. When I go to Brooklyn, I don't necessarily look as religious. I don't look so fanatical. We have a similar story in the Torah. When Lot was running away from the city of Sodom, he told the angels, in Sodom, I looked very righteous. It was a horrible town. I don't want to go to another big town where I'm going to be wicked. Let me stay in this town over here, which is very small. So similarly, what she was saying was, till you came to my house, God said, you're a righteous woman. You come to my house, suddenly I look wicked. Now you're killing my son. All right, so let's continue the story over here. And he said to her, give me your son. And she took him from her bosom, and she brought him up to the upstairs chamber where he was living, and he lay him on his bed. And he called to her, and he called to the Lord and said, O Lord, my God, also on the widow with whom I am sojourning have you brought evil to kill her son. And he prostrated himself on the boy 3 times, and he called to the Lord and said, O Lord, my God, restore, please, the soul of this child within him. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Elijah, and the child's soul returned within him, and he lived. So we have here a clear case of resurrection of the dead with Elijah. And so obviously it would be very apropos that Elijah would be the one to herald the redemption. Very much fits with who he is and what he's done. So what we have here now is a couple jobs for Elijah. We've added on to the jobs that Elijah does. And so we're going to explore, as we continue, a couple more of Elijah's roles. And then we're going to try and understand, why does he have all these roles? So let's continue over here. Who knows, either by putting in the chat or on Facebook in the comments, what the Hebrew word for the Messiah is? And more importantly, if you know what the Hebrew word for Messiah is, what does it mean? What does the Hebrew word for Messiah mean? So I'm going to open the chat here if anybody wants to respond. So yes, okay. The Hebrew word for Messiah is Mashiach. So what does Mashiach mean? Anybody knows? Mashiach Hashem. Mashiach means the anointed one. Mashiach means the anointed one. So Mashiach, the Redeemer, the Messiah, the Mashiach, means the anointed one. That is because just as all other kings of the house of David had to be anointed by a special anointing oil, although actually once King David was anointed, it continued for the rest of the generations, the Mashiach, who is the final king and the Redeemer, also is going to be anointed. Mashiach, he's going to be anointed. And who is going to be the one that is going to anoint the Mashiach? It says that it is none other than Elijah. Elijah is going to be the one that is going to anoint the Mashiach. Historically, the anointing of a king is done through a prophet, like Samuel, we know, anointed King David. So similarly, the Elijah is going to anoint the king of Mashiach. So that is another job that Elijah has. Another job that Elijah has is, anybody here heard of Raiders of the Lost Ark? I think it's a movie, right? Everybody's looking for the Lost Ark, the Ark of the Covenant that's been buried. And we are in fact told that there are many artifacts from the temple that were hidden away. Not just the ark was hidden away in the temple, but there's a couple other things. For example, if you look in the Torah, when the heavenly bread fell from heaven, God told them they have to put away a little bit in a jug and keep it for all generations. And we are told that that jug was also hidden away. What else is hidden away? One of the rites in order to become purified in the temple is called the paraduma, the red heifer. In order to enter the Temple Mount, you have to be pure, spiritually pure. Now, when you come in contact with a deceased person, you become spiritually impure. In order to purify yourself, you have to be sprinkled upon with the anointing oil. And so, not the anointing oil, sorry, with the ashes of the red heifer. So when Mashiach comes, what are we all going to do? How are we going to be purified? So we're told that this jug of this ashes is also hidden away. In addition to that, we're told that the staff of Aaron and a bunch of other things are hidden away. So one of Elijah's jobs, he's going to do a better job than, I forget who was the guy looking for the Lost Ark, but he's going to do a better job. He is going to find all these lost items, the ark and the jug of oil and the red heifer ashes and the staff. He's going to find all of those things. That is his job, or another one of his jobs. So let's again count what are Elijah's jobs. First and foremost, of course, heralding the redemption. But in addition to that, he is the one that possibly helps out with the lineage. He brings peace. He resurrects the dead. He anoints the King Mashiach. He finds a bunch of lost objects. And if that wasn't enough, Elijah still has more jobs. By the way, you might think by the end of this, what is the Mashiach himself doing? You know, Elijah's taking all the credit. So we'll get to that question at the end. Another interesting thing that Elijah does is answering a lot of unresolved questions. There is a word in the Talmud that appears so frequently, in fact, 317 times. It's called the word teku. Teku. It's also a most frustrating word. The word teku means that we don't know the answer pretty much. Many times in the Talmud, we'll go back and forth between the different opinions until one opinion can disprove the other. It could take a couple pages, but that's what we work towards. We want to know, who is the law like? Now, if it's a debate between a multitude of people and one, so obviously the multitude wins the argument. But let's say it's an argument between two people. Who wins the argument? And sometimes we don't come to a resolution, and what we say is teku. Teku means we don't know. That's where it's going to be. And a deeper explanation of the word teku actually means, as I'll show you here in a moment, let me show you on the text on the screen. Elijah will end all disagreements. This is the basis for the popular notion the word teku, mentioned in the Talmud, is an acronym for Tishbi Yitaretz Kushis Bias, the Tishbite, Elijah the Tishbi. Right, everybody knows the song, Eliyahu ha-Tishbi, right, the Tishbi, will resolve all the questions and inquiries. The simple interpretation reads it as a promantio of words, kai, tehei, leave the matter at status quo. So the point of what I'm trying to get to is Elijah's job, another one of Elijah's job, is to now come to us when the Mashiach comes and answer all these 317 unresolved questions. It's a very interesting thing that when we don't have an answer, what we're telling you is wait till the Mashiach comes and then we'll have an answer. Now there's a couple interesting questions. Why would Elijah be the one to have all the answers to these questions? There were many, many great rabbis. Why are we waiting for Elijah? What specifically is great about Elijah? Now, if you want to tell me that he's a prophet, there's a general rule in Judaism that Torah lo b'shamayim, the Torah is not in the heavens. That's why we don't study Torah on an airplane. No, I'm kidding. The Torah is not in the heavens. That means that that we do not judge Jewish law based upon prophecy. A prophet and a rabbi were different. The prophet and the Bet Din were very, very different. We do not judge Jewish law based upon prophecy. It has to be based upon our understanding. That's how God wants it. In fact, there's a crazy story in the Talmud where there was an argument between the rabbis, many rabbis and one rabbi, and this one rabbi said, I know I'm right, and heaven and earth will testify to me, and even a heavenly voice came out and said, this rabbi is right. And nevertheless, the other rabbis did not agree to him. Now you have, so to speak, God himself weighing in and saying this rabbi is right, and the rabbis didn't agree, and that's because at the end of the day, God wants us to judge based upon our intellect and understanding. Now, so if Elijah is going to come and the way he's going to answer all the questions is by prophecy, then that's a little problematic. Because then first of all, there are many prophets, there are many other prophets. Why him? And you're just not supposed to answer questions out of prophecy. So there's a couple interesting answers. One interesting answer says that Elijah is just the smartest around. Why is he the smartest around? Well, think about it. If you recall, we studied Elijah never died. So if Elijah has been alive since the time of Moses, if we say that Moses and that Phineas and Elijah are the same person, then he's been alive for a very, very long time, then surely with all those years, he has a lot of understanding and a lot of knowledge and wisdom. And surely he could answer these questions. Now, there's a problem with that answer. You see, we're never satisfied with anything in Judaism. We always have to dig deeper. The problem is, and I'm sure you've heard of this, and we spoke about this, many rabbis, or I shouldn't say rabbis, many righteous people, men and women, have had revelations of Elijah, a revelation of Elijah. So if people have seen Elijah throughout all the generations, then couldn't Elijah answer this question already? Even in the Talmud, there are stories of Elijah appearing to sages in the Talmud. So if we're saying in the Talmud, we have to wait till we hear from Elijah, well, then when Elijah appeared to the sage in the Talmud, he should have asked him all those questions. Why do we need to wait till Mashiach comes and then Elijah is going to give us the answer? Elijah has appeared to many people throughout all the generations. And so the Chidah, a fascinating sage, he explains and he says, interestingly enough, that although Elijah appeared throughout the generations to many different people, he did not reveal in his full glory and in his full heightened state, and he will only fully reveal himself when the Mashiach comes, and that is why only then we will get our answers. What I do want to point out from this back and forth, and again, I'm not trying to confuse anybody here, but what I do want to point out from here is that in Judaism, we always probe deeper and deeper. Asking questions is never a problem. And so all these fascinating questions just show that it's just a good thing. You can ask deeper and deeper, and probably if you have a good question, very likely it's been asked before. Although not always, there may be a place for you to innovate something. In the Zohar, it gives it gives also an explanation as to why Elijah specifically could be the one to answer the questions. The Zohar says like this: Elijah will be Moses' mouthpiece, namely, at that time he will come and resolve all unresolved questions. So the Kabbalistic notion gives a simpler explanation to Elijah's knowledge. Before I told you Elijah's knowledge is based on living for so long, they give a simple way. The Kabbalistic notion is, simply put, he is a mouthpiece for Moses, and obviously Moses would have all the answers. Moses is the giver of the Torah. And just as we know, Moses once had a mouthpiece who was called Aaron. Moses will have another mouthpiece called Elijah, and Elijah, as the mouthpiece of Moses, will have the answer to all these questions. Okay. So with this, we have concluded the second part in that we now have a better understanding. Sorry, we concluded the first part of today's lesson in that we have hopefully a better the second part, that Elijah has other roles in the redemption, and that includes finding who is possibly lineage, who is Jewish, who is not. We also have that he brings peace. We have he brings the resurrection of the dead. We have that he comes to answer questions that have not been known for a long time. He anoints the king Mashiach. He will identify missing things. So he has a lot of jobs. He's a busy guy, busy guy. But that brings us to another question, which is why him? But before we get to why him, let's get to a different question, and that is, how will the Mashiach come? So again, part one, we discussed today how he is a man of many roles. In addition to his heralding the redemption, he will do a lot of other things. And that is why you'll see his name referenced so often with the coming of the Mashiach, because not only is he the one making the announcement, he's not only the he is actually has many roles even once the Mashiach comes. When will he come? We touched upon this last time. And as we said, some are of the opinion that the Mashiach will arrive 3 days prior to the coming of Mashiach. Others claim that he will arrive the day before. Others say he will come after the Mashiach. Others state he will start before the Mashiach comes and then after the Mashiach comes. So there were all different explanations. And as we read last time from the Maimonides, that Maimonides said the simple interpretation of the prophet's words appear to imply that the war of Gog and Magog will take place at the beginning of the Messianic age after Mashiach's arrival, but before the war of Gog and Magog, a prophet will rise to inspire Israel to be upright and prepare their hearts. As scripture states, behold, I am sending you Elijah. By contrast, there are some sages who say that Elijah's coming will precede Mashiach's arrival. All these and similar matters cannot be definitely known by man until they occur. For these matters are undefined in the prophet's words, and even the wise men have no established tradition regarding these matters except their own interpretations of the verses. Therefore, there is controversy among them regarding these matters. So, in short, we don't actually know the answer. We don't actually know when the Mashiach comes, when Elijah is going to come. Is it going to be before the Mashiach or after the Mashiach? We did discuss that possibly it depends. If the Mashiach is coming in a manner of haste, then possibly it'll come before Mashiach. If he comes in the process, then maybe Elijah will come first. But now let us get to why the Elijah. Why is it going to be Elijah who's going to do all of these things? And this is the most important question and will have the most relevance to us. In other words, it's very nice to know that he's doing all these things, but why is he picked to do that job? Why is the Mashiach not enough? And once we understand that, we will have a beautiful lesson in our very own lives. So there are, as usual, multiple ways to answer this question. So again, the question being, we see that Elijah has many roles. Not only is his role to announce the coming of the Mashiach, but his role is even once Mashiach comes, he has many roles such as resurrecting the dead, lineage, fights, arguments, and things like that. And again, the question is, why do we need his opinion if the Mashiach is there? And presumably the Mashiach is very powerful in his own right and very righteous and very holy. So let's take a look. Do I have this over here? Okay. So the Rabbi gives an interesting explanation, and he says the reason why Elijah will herald the future redemption is because he personifies what the Messianic era is all about. The Messianic era is not just a reward for what we've done. In other words, the Messianic era, you can look at it as, well, the Jews stuck it out, or, sorry, the Messianic era comes about through the whole world, really. That we all stuck it out, and we clinged to God, and we did what we had to do. And so for that, God is going to reward us with the utopian era. So actually, reward, if God wanted to give us reward is enough after we pass away. There's a world to come. There's a lot of reward over there, which, by the way, the JLI course later this year will be about the journeys of the soul. But regardless, the coming of the Mashiach and the Messianic era is more than reward. It's actually what we're doing. So in other words, there's a theory out there, and I may have spoken about this in different classes. Some people believe that the only reason we're on this world is to give us free will, to give us choice. And by making the right choices, we are shown to be worthy people, and then we can be rewarded. And but the Hasidic and Kabbalistic way of looking at it is to say that we're here on a mission for God. We're here to do something for God. Yes, God will reward us because God is just and right and will always reward those who do something for him. But God had a job and mission. God wanted to take this world which does not show God in any way. God is shows God, but God is very, very hidden. And what we have to do is show how truthfully God is within this world. That is our job. We're supposed to take, so to speak, an imperfect world, a world which hides God, and make God seem relevant, make God seem present, make God's presence be felt. We can do that by doing the mitzvot, by bringing more spirituality into our lives. And so the coming of the Mashiach is the culmination of all of our work and everything that we have done throughout all the generations. And that is that when the Mashiach comes, all what we've been trying to do, what have we been trying to do? We've tried to bring spirituality and godliness into the world. All that will be revealed. When Mashiach comes, it says God's presence will be revealed in this physical world. We don't need to leave this world to feel God's presence. Even within this physical reality, we will feel God's reality in this world. To put in other words, we always say, the purpose that we are trying to accomplish is to transform materialism to holiness. And who epitomizes that is Elijah. Some people are born very holy. For example, Moses. It says when Moses was born, the house was filled with light. Moses, from the day he was born a very, very spiritual being. He was born a person who his physical body shined out his spiritual personality. That is why it says the home was filled with light. His spiritual essence and being shined directly from his soul to his body. It says he was born after only a 6-month pregnancy. He was so perfect that at the earliest date already he was able to be born. So to speak, he was so spiritual, his body was almost irrelevant. We see even when he went up to heaven, he was able to stand there for 40 days and 40 nights without drinking or eating. However, if you look at Elijah's story, he was someone who struggled with his nature. And in fact, the name Elijah in Hebrew, Eliyahu, has the same numerical value as the word behema, which means animal. Elijah was not born spiritually perfect. He had to fight and overcome his inner desires and animalistic nature. But yet Elijah was not deterred, and he persisted, and he purified and refined himself. And he refined himself to even greater than, so to speak, Moses was. He refined himself to the point where he didn't even die. He ascended to heaven alive. So Moses, who was born so holy that his soul shined through his body was almost irrelevant. But Elijah's the other way around. Elijah elevated and uplifted his body. So to speak, Moses never dealt with his body. His body was a sideshow. He was able to shine straight through it. But Elijah was able to transform it. Let me give another example. If I want to send a message to someone across the world, there are 2 ways I can do it. There's many ways, of course. I can send it directly through a voice note. or type it out. In those cases, the medium is not important because my exact words are getting there, whether it comes through WhatsApp or through text message or through email. My exact words are getting to the other person. The message comes pure, pristine, perfect. What I wanted to pass on gets there exactly as it was meant to be. However, let's say I have a message for someone else, but I'm passing it through someone else. And let's say they're not going to get there for many, many years. It's going to take them a while. They have to first internalize the message, internalize what I told them, and then tell it over in their own words. So the difference between the two is in the second case, the person who I'm dealing with is important. And the person I'm dealing with, if they really want to remember it, if they're not going to be able to say it over in one instant, if it'll take a while, let's say they're traveling and they won't get to wherever they're telling the message over will not be for a bunch of days. Hopefully they're not just memorizing it, but they're internalizing what I told them and are able to pass it on to the next person. As teachers, we always want that our students shouldn't just parrot the knowledge. We want them to identify and become one with the knowledge that we're teaching them. And that is what God wants of us. He doesn't just want that the spiritual light should just pass through our bodies, but it should actually become part and parcel of our body. Our body should be a part of it. And that is epitomized with Elijah. Elijah is one who not only the spiritual message passed through him, but it actually became a part of him. Let's read text number 7. To the point where he became so holy and so spiritual that he didn't die, similar to when Mashiach comes, we're all going to live forever. So here, Elijah's unique association with the heralding of the redemption can be understood by way of explaining the difference between him and Moses. When Moses was born, the house was filled with light, but at the end of the day, the light did not penetrate his material body, and thus his body was ultimately buried. Elijah, by contrast, was of different cloth. He transformed his material body so much so that he ascended alive to heaven. This then is his connection to the redemption. For the redemption is all about all flesh together shall see that the mouth of God spoke, namely that the material flesh will be transformed so that it will actually see godliness. And so that is why, just from a perspective of heralding the redemption, Elijah is the one best suited for this, because he is the one who truthfully epitomized what the Mashiach is, what the era of the Mashiach is doing. Another possible reason, by the way, this didn't necessarily explain why he's so involved in many of the different aspects of the Mashiach, but it can explain some of them. So for example, the resurrection of the dead, we can now understand why he's so connected to the resurrection of the dead. Resurrection of the dead means that the bodies are so refined that they can handle the soul, and so to speak, the bodies identify with the spirituality of the soul, which is something which, of course, Elijah did, and that's why he lived forever. Another way of explaining why Elijah has to come before Mashiach is things have to happen in stages, and especially as we've spoken about, that the coming of the Mashiach is something which is exponentially greater. In fact, it says when the Mashiach comes, it says Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitze, a new Torah will come out of me. It says when Mashiach comes, and we'll discuss this later, that there will be a new Torah when Mashiach comes. Now, that's a little problematic, as we know. Elsewhere in the prophet says, Torah zulote muchlefes, this Torah will not be switched out for any other. So what does it mean that there will be a new Torah when Mashiach comes? It doesn't mean that the laws will change. What it means is we will understand the Torah in such a utterly different dimension that it'll almost be called a new Torah, because we'll understand it at such a higher level. Now, in order to get to such a level, in order to get the Torah of Mashiach, in order to get to the level of the understanding of the Mashiach, we need some preparation. We need somebody to help us get there. So putting it this way, Mashiach is the one that's going to teach the Torah on this very, very high level. He's going to reveal to us the deeper message of the Torah, a way we've never understood it before, to an extent where we can say Torah Chadash Amiti Teitze, it's almost like a new Torah. But who is going to be the stepping stone? Who is going to help us to get from the Torah as we understand it now to the Mashiach? That is Elijah. So let's read over here. There are a number of items that we find as preparatory steps for the Mashiach. In Maimonides' words, Elijah's role will be to align the people and prepare their hearts for the Messianic era. It certainly must be so regarding the primary matter of the Messianic era, namely what Maimonides describes as the sages yearned for the Messianic era only so that they be free to engage in Torah wisdom. The opportunity to engage in understanding the knowledge of the Creator, it is necessary to align the Jewish people and prepare their hearts for that. So Elijah has to prepare us for the coming Mashiach. It says clearly in the books of the prophets that Elijah is the one that makes us repent and return. And so Elijah is going to be the one that's going to help us take this monumental step to go from where we are now to where the Mashiach is going to be. He's the one that helps us reach there. So that is the second understanding of why we need Elijah. So again, one understanding why Elijah heralds the redemption is because he epitomizes the year of the redemption, which could explain some of his roles. The second explanation between Elijah is he is the one that helps us reach the Messianic era. He's the one that helps us get to this level, which is so different than what we can appreciate today. Just to tell you, we will discuss a little bit more about what is this new Torah about Mashiach, what is it all about? What does it mean there's a new Torah? That's going to be for other classes about the Mashiach. But just to know that Mashiach is not just that we're going to live in the same world we live today, just that it'll be perfect. He's going to teach us things that we have never had before. And Elijah is going to be the stepping stone. And the last explanation that we have here today of Mashiach's role will answer all of our questions. And it's really the simplest explanation, and it's a beautiful explanation. The first time the Jewish people were redeemed, who came to redeem them? Any thoughts in the chat? I know you know the answer. Who came to redeem them? You're all going to tell me Moses. But it's not just Moses, it was also Aaron. Throughout the story of the redemption, there were these two personalities. Aaron always worked closely with his brother Moses, and later on in the desert, he served as the high priest. He was known also as the man of peace. He mediated between people to bring mutual love and respect. And as Hasidic philosophy explains, it's not just that Aaron possessed certain physical traits that his brother did not have. Rather, they represented two different spiritual dimensions that are equally necessary. So, for example, Moses was the man of truth. Moses was Torah. Moses was the law, literal understanding of the law. That was his job. You want to know what you have to do? Come to Moses. He'll tell you clear cut, cold as it is. Aaron, though, it says, came from the world of kindness, and he was, so to speak, peace. Peace and truth don't always get along. And sometimes the truth has to be stretched a little bit for the peace. So Aaron was famous for sometimes bending the truth a little bit in order to achieve peace. For example, it says, the famous story about him, it says that when two people would fight, he would come over to one of them and tell him, your friend really wants to make peace with you, but he's embarrassed. And before they had a chance to meet each other, he would go over to the other guy and tell him the same story. Really, your friend wants to make peace with you, but he's too embarrassed. And he was bending the truth. But then they would all make up. When people fight, they all don't want to be the first to say that they were wrong. So he circumvented the whole problem by coming over to each person and telling him, really, you were, he already says sorry, and he says sorry. People are babies, but what can we say? That reminds me of the Rabbi got up on Yom Kippur talking all about forgiveness and, let's forgive each other. Let's make sure we don't hate each other. And he says, who here in this room can say they have no enemies? Who here in this room can say there's nobody that they hate? So one old man in the back raises his hand. The rabbi's a little shocked, so the rabbi calls him up and says, Shmerel, tell the congregation, how is it that you have nobody that you hate? He says, Rabbi, I have to tell you the truth. All the people that I hated already died. All right. But anyways, so we all have people that we, everybody's afraid to make peace because we don't want to be the one to admit that we were wrong. So Aaron was willing to bend the truth a little bit to make peace. So again, Moses, he's truth. Aaron, he is peace. And they were a good team. They were able to work together. You need both. And so similarly, that is why the Mashiach will need Elijah. Let's read over here. The original redemption from Egypt was effected by the two redeemers, as the verse states. He sent Moses, his servant, and Aaron, whom he chose. So it will be in this generation. Two redeemers will be sent. Indeed, the verse states, I will send Elijah the prophet to you. That's one. The second, behold my servant, I will support him. It is for this reason that the verse states, send your light and your truth. Your light and your truth. And this will, by the way, answer our many questions above. Why does Elijah have so many roles when Mashiach comes? Remember, all his different roles. He had a role of making peace, a role of answering questions, a role of resurrecting the dead, a role of finding things. Why does he have so many roles in the coming of Mashiach? And the answer is, it's no different than Aaron and Moses. Just as Aaron had roles and Moses had roles, so too when the Mashiach comes, we're going to have these two redeemers. It's going to be Elijah and it's going to be the Mashiach. They're going to work as a tag team to get done what needs to get done. And I find this the simplest. I think the other explanations can go together with this. So, for example, the explanation that Elijah is the one that epitomizes, elevation of the physical. That's also an element of peace, making peace between physical and spiritual, and having this idea that he's the one that helps let us reach to the Mashiach's Torah is also similar to Aaron and Moses. For example, we know that that Aaron was the one that would actually tell the message of Moses, because Moses had an impediment in his speech. Aaron was actually the messenger of Moses. So similarly, when the Mashiach comes, who's going to be the one that's going to allow us to reach to the Mashiach's level is going to be Elijah. And again, this explains why Elijah will have so many jobs when the Mashiach comes, and why when we speak about the Mashiach, we don't just speak about the Mashiach, but so often we also speak about Elijah. In fact, if you look at many of the prayers where we talk about Mashiach, we're praying for Mashiach, we actually speak about Elijah, not Mashiach. There's some prayers as Kol Mevaser V'Omer, voices calling out and telling us that the Mashiach is coming. It's one of the prayers we say in Hoshana Rabbah. So many different prayers that we say are talking about, not about Mashiach's actual coming, but about Elijah announcing him. And again, because Elijah has such an integral part, he's not just the blowhorn for Mashiach, but he has an integral part even once the Mashiach comes. Another simple explanation why Elijah has to come before Mashiach is that Elijah is inspiration. He is the one that will inspire us, and obviously we need inspiration before the Mashiach comes. And the Baal Shem Tov actually says that Elijah's coming can actually be incognito. That Elijah, so to speak, is the inspiration within us. We don't necessarily have to see an actual Elijah to have the inspiration of Elijah. So when we are inspired, when we decide to change, it could be that it's the Elijah within us that's arousing us. And as the verse says, he will return the parents to the children to the parents. We will all return to God. So let's read a text over here. This is from the Chernobyl Rebbe. He lived in the city of Chernobyl before it became unfortunately famous. So he says like this. The verse states, Lo, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming. The word sholeach, that's backwards, okay. Over here it's correct. Sholeach, it says chalush, it means weak. Anyways, the word sholeach, I will send, as opposed to the word sent so the word sholeach is actually written in the present tense, which implies that it's already happening now. The truth is that all the inspiration any Jew has towards their Father in heaven is the element of Elijah announcing all matters of perfection like Torah and prayer. Prior to perfection, there must be much yearning and desire, and that comes through Elijah, who inspires this great drive. Only after that does the element of Mashiach arrive. As the Baal Shem Tov stated, every Jew ought to prepare and polish the portion of Mashiach that is directly related to the soul. Mashiach's actual arrival is the culmination of the individual souls of all 600,000 Jews. For this reason, every Jew must work with the portion of Mashiach that is relevant to their soul until the entire collective body is unified, constantly made soon be in our days. Such unity is impossible without a great amount of prior inspiration. This inspiration is called an announcement, and it is Elijah's role. Thus, prior to the perfection of Mashiach, Elijah's announcement will come to inspire Jews' greatest yearning and desire. But the important line was in the first one, where he said this feeling of Mashiach is happening now, and as he said, that all inspiration that any Jew has towards their Father in heaven is the element of Elijah announcing. So this is a powerful point. We don't have to wait for the physical Elijah for us to be inspired, for us to yearn and to awaken and to desire to bring the Mashiach, because the Mashiach is hopefully a culmination of our work. As we discussed, Mashiach can come in one of two ways, but hopefully he comes because of our righteousness. And the coming of Elijah could mean within our lives we have these moments of inspiration in which Elijah awakens us and brings us to the inspiration that we have to better ourselves, which brings the Mashiach. And what this explanation has done is taken this whole concept of Elijah, which we've discussed today, and made it less abstract and something that actually occurs now. Sholeach, Elijah is something that happens in the present tense. It's not something in the future, an abstract concept, but it's something that happens now. We can all tap into that feeling of Elijah within us, that calling to be inspired, that calling to do something good, the calling to change, especially now as we come to our holidays, the calling to change our lives. That is the element of the Mashiach that we have, of Elijah that we have within ourselves. So to conclude, what is Elijah's role? We gave him many, many different roles today, from resurrecting the dead and other different things. We said, why does Elijah have so many roles in addition to bringing the Mashiach? We said, first of all, well, I'm going to switch the order here, but I think, first of all, just like Moses operated with Aaron, the Mashiach will operate with Elijah. Now, why Elijah specifically? Well, first of all, Elijah is the man of inspiration. We actually see that in his original story. Elijah is also, he lived a very long life, so he has a lot of wisdom. But Elijah is the one who purified his body, who elevated his body to the point where his body wasn't just the light of God didn't just pass through his body, but it became part and parcel of his body, and that is what the coming of the Mashiach is. And so I think those are the two main lessons that I want everybody to take today. Is first of all, what is the concept of Mashiach? We don't want that your spiritual life and your regular life are separate. So a lot of people have, possibly, nobody on this call, of course, but some people have, where, they are who they are in the synagogue, and they're a separate person in work and regular day-to-day life. And what Judaism wants us is that the messages and the feelings and the mitzvahs and the spirituality has to has to be a part of us every single day of our life, not only when we're in synagogue. As we have been discussing throughout the quarantine, Judaism is not just in the synagogue. Judaism is at home. Judaism is at work. Judaism is when you're traveling, wherever you are. There's no break from Judaism. We don't show up to synagogue and get done with our obligations for Judaism and spirituality. We're supposed to take that inspiration home. Synagogue is just a place of inspiration and a place where we can talk directly to God in a more direct manner. But we have to bring that inspiration home. We have to change who we are. That is what Mashiach is about. If we just take our Judaism and separated from who we are to the point where people may not even know that we're Jewish, that we may not be doing what we're here on this earth to do. People should be able to see that you're Jewish. You should always, wherever you go, make a kiddush Hashem, make a good sanctification of God's name. When people know that you're Jewish and you act in this way because you're Jewish, that shows, that spreads God's beautiful name. And that was something that Elijah did. He didn't just allow his spirituality to be something that he did, but it was a part and parcel of himself. So some of us live one way. Some of us live that our Judaism is very separate from who we are as a person. Others live in a way where their Judaism is, you had maybe a Moses who was so spiritual that he almost lost the physical. You can see this, in some other religions, the ashrams in India or other places, people who meditate, people who believe in asceticism. But Judaism says, no, neither path is correct. Spirituality, Judaism is not something we do once a week. And also it's not something where we separate from the world. We have to make it a part and parcel of our life, a part and parcel of who we are. And unfortunately, for many people, it's not like that. A lot of people look at, everybody says, well, I'm Jewish till the day I die. But, you can always see, where are your priorities in life? For many people, priority of baseball or priority of dance or priority of art supersede their kids' Jewish education. Unfortunately, I see it here in this town many times. Why is that? Yes, they identify as Jewish. But Judaism is something that has its place, it gets done, but it's not what I do every single moment of my life. That's why there's this old joke. The old joke, I've said this many times, that the rabbi, the priest, and the minister, they were having a problem with the rats in their houses of worship. So they all decided they're going to meet and see who has the best idea of what to do. So the priest came back and said, I tried the rat traps, but the rats are very smart. A lot of times they can get the peanut butter without getting trapped. So it's bad, didn't really work. Next week, the minister comes back and says, well, I tried the poison. First of all, it's not so humane. Then other animals eat it, it's not good. And also they get up in the attic, they die there, they stink, it's a terrible idea. Then the next week, the rabbi comes back and says, I got the best idea. So they say, what'd you do? He says, listen, I gathered all the rats in the synagogue, I put a tallis over them, I gave them a bar mitzvah, and they never showed up again. So why is it that so many people have the bar mitzvah and they don't show up again? Because Judaism is something that's necessary for certain parts of your life. You need a rabbi when you have a bris, you need a rabbi for a bar mitzvah, you need a rabbi for a wedding, you need a rabbi for a divorce, you need a marriage for a burial. Right? That's it. That's all where Judaism goes. Maybe once a year, Rosh Hashanah, maybe Hanukkah. But in day-to-day life, what's most important in my life? A lot of other things. And that's not what we're looking for. To bring the Mashiach, we want to live an Elijah type of life. We want to change who we are, who our identity is. It's difficult because as human beings, we say, well, what about me? What do you mean? So I came to this earth just to serve God? What do you mean? I thought I'm here to have a nice life, have a nice family, have nice kids. And the real outlook of Judaism is, of course, God wants you to have a nice life. But why do you have a nice life? God wants you to have a nice life, to raise a nice family, to have a nice Jewish family, nice spiritual family. God gives you all these things because he wants you to elevate them. Otherwise, he wouldn't give them to you. Ani lo nevresi, as we say in Pirkei Avot, Ani lo nevresi, I was not created, ella l'shamesh eskoni, only to serve my Creator. That is the whole reason we're created, to serve God. And everything we have in life, our family, our job, our wealth, or the lack thereof, whatever we have in life is all there to serve God. It's all there to elevate ourselves, our family, the things around us, to serve God. So what's most important? For example, in raising kids, is it most important that they become a valedictorian? Is it most important? What's most important is that they can, any parent will tell you, I'd rather a moral child, a child with good character, than to be smart. right? It's better to have a good-natured child than a child who's smart and is not very nice. Casey, you might be able to make a lot of money, but he's not a good person. And in Judaism, we take it a step further. We not only want them to be nice, we want them to also recognize that they have to serve God. And so as I raise my children, that is what I look to do every single day. My role as a parent is to be their parent, and that helps them serve God. That is, I am part and parcel of their service of God, and vice versa. It all works. Everything we have in life is about serving God. There's not us, and then there's God. Well, that's how we look at it, because we're people. But our goal is to be like Elijah, to be to the point where our body is so refined, where God is so felt in ourselves that we don't even die. We live forever because there's nothing to die. Only physical things die. Spiritual things don't die. So I hope you enjoyed this class on Elijah. Next week, we'll get to the grand banquet. This is an interesting thing. It's already kind of getting into something that happens when the Mashiach comes, but we're told when the Mashiach comes, we're going to have this giant meal made up of the Shor Habor, this giant ox, and of the Leviathan, this giant fish. Not a whale, a fish. Whales are not kosher, fish are. And so hopefully you'll join us next week, Wednesday, same time, same place, to hear all about the Leviathan. And that will be the last class on the Mashiach until we pick up the next section of the course after the holidays.
Thank you.